Hi everybody, it's T Falcon Napier. Welcome to the Oracle of the Self. Today we're going to continue our discussion where we left off last time around. And just to give you guys a bit of a reminder of where that was, we were speaking in detail about the obstacles that one might encounter. And we were talking about that there are obstacles of a practical nature, so real things that you have to deal with as you go about pursuing any kind of a goal. But the other thing is that there are also a lot of obstacles of the mind. And so these are just beliefs, attitudes, biases, prejudices, whatever it is that they filters your experience of the world. That stuff is all happening in your head, and there's a lot of stuff that can be happening in your head that you can in turn use as an obstacle. So there's these two different categories of obstacles, and we left things off saying that if you're going to be in this profession, you really need to be able to handle both types of obstacles, but certain disciplines within the human development profession that we've chosen may favor the practical over the more cerebral sort of stuff, or vice versa. And that's where we left things off. So what I wanted to do was basically help you guys get back to the core reason why we're doing this. And it gets back to the name of this program. This program is called the Oracle of the Self. And its little subtitle tagline is that it explores the conversations that you are having with you about you. Obviously, it's specific to whatever situation you want to look at, but we're looking at conversations that you are having with yourself about yourself. When it comes to whatever this situation happens to be. So the very first thing we do when we are pursuing the Oracle of the Self or tapping into our Oracle of the Self is we choose some sort of a subject area to look at, whether it's an issue that's happened or it's a goal that you're trying to work on or a problem that you face or a simple task that's on your to-do list that you've not really completely thought through. This is a wonderful way to help you think these things through, talk to yourself about what's really going on, figure it all out inside of your own head before you embark upon whatever course of action you ultimately are going to take. And so I want you to think of this tool as being part of the Oracle of the Self process, but also look at it as a standalone sort of thing that you can and should pull out anytime you need to make a high quality decision in in as little time as possible. So when we're selling this program as precision decisions to our corporate clients, we would say to them, that's the whole point. We want people to be able to spend less time in meetings. Even if that meeting is just with yourself in your own head talking about yourself, we want you to spend less time in those meetings so you have more time to live life. And not only do we want you to spend less time in those meetings, we want to make sure that the decisions that come out of those kinds of meetings are of as high quality as possible. And so this is what we really are trying to achieve as we are employing this path of self-discovery sort of approach. So now, if we move on to the second step of the path, no, scratch that, the second step of the process, at each of these steps that we're taking, we may put forth something that we could turn into an activity that's plottable on the change grid. Now, I believe I said that most of that doesn't come out of the current situation. The current situation is basically what it is. It's just kind of a critical assessment of how things are happening right now. So I don't often find a lot of activities here unless the person, let's say they're in a work situation and they've been given a job description and this is all the things they have to do. Well, if I just want to kind of see how are they thinking and feeling about their job, I could just take their job description and pretty much plop it into an activity list and use it for that particular purpose. That's still all current situation stuff. If you think about it, this is their job description. So it's not what it's all about. Now, once we see their result, we may come back to it and say, Well, now we can add some into the current situation because the first change grid showed that they are aligned with the following tasks. They are up grid, up in stress about these tasks. They're down in apathy about these tasks. And from that additional insight, we can say, well, what do they want to do about it? What do we want to do about it as the perhaps their management team? How can we, no, forget the how. What is it that we want? Why do we want it? Why is that really mattering to us? And why should they care about it if we're going to try to win them over to our way of thinking? Well, what's in it for them? What do they want? So, and then I can say, what's stopping them from getting there? Well, if part of the situation that we're looking at right now in the change grid is that they're very much up grid, up in stress about a particular activity, well, that stress is an obstacle. What's causing that stress? We could do a deeper dive and find out if it's an issue about a lack of awareness about something that they need to know more about. Is it about a critical ability that they're lacking, whether it's skill or knowledge, whatever? Is it that they just don't want to do it? There's a lack of motivation. There's a lack of willingness to do it. Is it that they're just not suitable for the task? We can really do a deep dive into identifying the obstacles that can be there. But bottom line, as we've said many times now, and hopefully you guys are starting to, I don't know, not necessarily memorize it, but know this well enough to think about it, is that if you know where you're at and you know where you want to go, why aren't you already there? I mean, we've already said the reason why you're not already at your desired situation is because there is some obstacle or set of obstacles, real or imagined, that are in your way. And until these things are identified and assessed and dealt with, well, the chances of you reaching your desired situation are compromised at the very least, if not rendered unattainable. So this is what we're doing. So the desired situation is filled with potential activities that you might plot, because again, this is about goal statements. And so you might say, well, one of my biggest goals right now is to lose X amount of weight. It is to accomplish the following tasks, finish this particular job by this particular date, improve my relationship with my siblings. I mean, whatever it is. I mean, who knows what you might have in your mind? But anytime you are making a goal statement, I promise you that goal statement is pretty easily transferred onto an activity list. So we get a lot of plottable activities out of that desired step. Now, just because a lot of potential activities are being generated here, does not mean you want to explore all of them. We really do want to keep a rather tight list of things we want to look at. In fact, we label the things we actually want to look at as mission critical activities. If we look at all the things you could be doing in terms of reaching your goals or getting rid of the obstacles, and certainly we get into the solution steps, you're going to find out there's just a lot of them. And we kind of reach a point where we go like, that's just plain too many. Can we reduce this to a dozen or a couple of dozen activities that are truly mission critical, not mission incidental, not mission optional, not even mission. I want to say there's some activities that make the mission more pleasant, but really aren't affecting the outcome other than in that immediate moment, the process that you're going through. So there's a lot of things that we could be putting down on the list, but we're not going to necessarily choose all of them. We want to focus on mission critical activities, but it's better to start off with a robust list of possibilities. In fact, if you were on the professional side of the equation, or if you were a ChangeWorks facilitator or something, we might tell you that it's a very useful exercise for you to thoroughly flesh out every one of these steps. Just because you may not choose to explore them more deeply on a change grid does not mean that just the process of identifying all these things isn't in and of itself a highly beneficial aspect of learning how to speak more effectively with yourself about yourself. Right. So any thoughts, comments about what I've just said there about these three? Yeah.
Can you unpack that a little bit more in terms of the mission critical? Because it seems like when people are in a crisis, like
Mhm.
everything is critical,
Well, yeah.
depending on where they are, right? So like I think about theory of constraints or factor analysis that talk about how like while you see all of these various things, you typically can reduce it down to a
Mhm.
certain number and everything else is kind of associated with it.
Exactly. Yeah. Subsets or whatever. Yep. Yep.
Right,
Yep.
right.
And so that's what we're really talking about. I want to know that whatever it is that I'm going to focus on, again, and whether I'm doing this for myself or I'm doing this for a peer or we're working with a client or whatever, I always want to make sure that any effort we put into helping them with a particular activity is actually going to make a difference in the outcome. And so let me give you guys an example of mission critical versus mission incidental. So let's say that you're in a work setting and you need to convince one of your superiors, whatever that means, to support you in some decision that you need to make or want to make. All right. So um, if I say, well, what do I need to do to make that happen? Well, if I create a thorough list, I could say, well, I need to schedule the appointment. And then I guess I need to get my thoughts together. And I'm going to have to get up and get out of bed and get dressed that morning to even have that meeting. I'm going to have to actually drive a car. I'm going to have to walk in. Can you hear that all those things will most definitely need to be done, but they are not mission critical. They're mission incidental. They're things that will take care of little tasks that are on the list. But the fact that I make my bed in the morning does not really get that person to support me in what I really want them to do. And so there's a skill in identifying what the mission critical activity is. And so we would do this in a coaching situation by asking our client questions, because again, we always want them to be walking their own path of self discovery. There's no reason for us to even begin to tell someone what their desired situation should be or what their obstacles are. I mean, we'll ask some provocative questions, we'll ask some probing questions and all that, but we're not here to tell them the answers to this. In fact, David will laugh about this. If you want us to tell you what's going on in your organization, then you need to hire us as a consultant because that's what a consultant is more than happy to do. Give you the what for, how to do it, now go do it, now, whatever it is. That's the world of a consultant. But in the world of coaching, the world of any kind of personal growth and development, if you will, it really is more about leading a person on their own path of self-discovery. And just kind of being that little whispering voice in their ear to just get them to look at something perhaps they hadn't seen before, or maybe, just maybe, after they seem to have exhausted their own ability to come up with the answers to these different steps, we might prime the pump a little bit. We might suggest something. So when it comes to obstacles, I might say, well, and how about when it comes to the amount of time that you have available for this particular activity? They go like, oh, yeah, 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 that's true. I've got all these things going on right now. So you may need to ask a question just to stimulate them to look in a different direction. But we do our best in that role to simply be their guide, their facilitator, their coach, etc. When you're applying this to yourself, that's certainly the posture you want to be taking. So you have just become your own client and you are talking to you about you, but this allows you to keep enough structure in it so it doesn't go wandering off on some crazy path. Because again, it's a matter of efficiency. When you walk the path of self-discovery the way that we're describing it for all of you, you're able to get to a conclusion much more quickly and much more easily than you would if you allowed these types of questions to get jumbled up. And woe be unto you if you suddenly find yourself at this red step where all the feelings and instincts and intuitions are now being felt and expressed and whatever, because they don't help with the concrete reality of the other four. This tends to distort things. So we want to keep it in the right order. I know I'm repeating this, but there's a reason why I'm harping on these basics, because this is absolutely central to all the work that we do in the world of tension management, whether it's just the change grid or just leading someone through this kind of a discovery discussion. So yeah, again, All right, so white, green, black. As I do this, I can certainly be populating the activity list. So if I said I have this, let me get back to that mission critical. The mission critical part of the little scenario I put forth is that thing we said, convincing my superior to support me in this activity. That's the mission critical piece. I have to convince them to support me in the whatever. That's an activity that would be very interesting to look at, where how you got there and what you wore, that's not going to I think ever appear on your change grid. Where you might say, there's another mission critical activity before I go to convince them. I need to prepare my argument. I need to build my case. I need to take what I know about that person and the kinds of questions they ask and the kind of decision maker they are and all that, and make sure that I'm factoring those things into that. So crafting this presentation, crafting this approach, that's also mission critical. Um, and we might say, well, there's something else mission critical before that. Maybe before I start putting anything together to go and present, I need to make sure that what I believe to be the case is actually true. So if I'm there trying to convince them to support me in whatever, I wonder whether or not A, do I need their support? B, does what I want to do actually merit their support? Where did this belief come from that I should be doing this in order to? So I just got to spend a little bit of time going like, before I embark upon this big old process and expose myself to a situation where I could either impress or distress my manager, maybe just maybe I need to take a deep breath, move myself to the center of the change grid, take a nice cleansing breath, close my eyes and say, what's actually happening here? And then look at things in that very concrete, detached kind of way. Now, at the end of that, if you go like, no, it's real, and something needs to be done about it, and I believe I can do something important about it. Well, that's how we would go about then preparing ourselves when it comes to that activity. Now, in order for you to do that research, if you said something, I need to do some Google searches. This feels more mission incidental to me than mission critical. Do you guys agree with me? Disagree with me? Do you make that distinction pretty easily?
Yes, sounds
Well,
good.
thank you.
Oh, no, I like I like the I don't mean to be so matter of fact. I like the description of how you position that. I was just reading some research that I'm starting to dig into from this social psychologist that said we know a lot about stressors and we often study that, but he said very few people actually study this ideal personal renewal. Like, what does that look like? It's a much more holistic way of going about
Oh yeah.
your day. So what does that look like? And I think that's exactly what this offer is, this idea of personal renewal. You get to pause for a moment despite whatever issue is going on and come, I call it establishing a from position. And
Mhm.
then you can build marginally from there by walking the path. And
Very
that to
good.
me makes more sense.
Very good. T, what would you like to add to that?
I okay. So you said, talked about, and I came into the discussion late, but mission critical activity, and then you said mission incidental. Would you say what that activity was and why it was mission incidental? So I can.
Oh yeah, mission incidental things are just things that are going to need to be done between now and the time that this meeting with our manager would be held, et cetera. And I rattled off a bunch of things like, well, you're going to have to get out of bed, you're going to have to brush your teeth,
Oh,
you're going to
yeah.
have to get in the car.
Okay.
Okay, so this is incidental sort of stuff. Could we plot on the change grid? Most of you on the call are fully licensed for the change grid. Yeah, we could look at that, but we know where it's going to end up on the change grid. So why waste the time and the energy?
Yes.
You
No,
know?
I understand.
But
Yeah.
incidental stuff is going to plot down grid and power apathy or apathy.
Yeah.
So now at the same time, if the truth is that these incidental things aren't getting done because the person is so far down grid, well, then even talking about whatever they want to talk to their manager about seems awfully premature. So, but I think that would be revealed as we work our way through the debrief. I guess what I'm saying is something that appears to be incidental, and perhaps we'd even be willing to say should just be incidental. Maybe for some people that's a real problem, and we'll find out about that as we explore this with them. I mean, sooner or later we're going to be looking at solutions, and
Well,
we'll follow that. Go ahead, T.
I was just going to say, it reminds me of Covey stuff, like first things first, and,
Yep.
what's really important. They're important in urgencies. And if you do everything that is important but not urgent,
Yeah.
but eventually it might become urgent. So,
Right.
and you have to pay attention to that, but it's not, those would be incidental things. But if you don't, it's going to become urgent. Then you got to put out the fire.
Yep, absolutely right. And so, we can at some point in time show people how the whole idea about is it important and is it urgent, how that applies on the change grid. So obviously, importance is a third dimension on the change grid, so it gets talked about in multiple ways. But you're absolutely right. The things that are very important and very urgent are best dealt with by someone with a driver energy, maybe with a little bit of an upgrid lean. So I'd probably want them to be that expressive driver energy because I do want it done. And that's that sense of urgency speaking for itself that could be up here. And then the idea about important, um, maybe we use importance as a different word, or it means more things to us than just the surface. But if I said something is essential rather than important, I can kind of keep it on these two dimensions and just say, well, if it's something essential, that also needs a driver energy to go out there and get it and plug it into place and make it all happen. So I think that we could say then important and urgent would both be in the driver quadrant, but even they would lean in their own particular direction. They'd say urgent but unimportant. Urgent, that's tension, but unimportant. Now I need to use the other layer. I need to use one of the sides of the change cube.
Yeah.
To really explain that, but yeah. Anyway, but you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. So, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like Brian was saying, there's a lot of books out there to support the need to have this balance and to really look at personal reflection. There's a lot of stuff out there. And people read it with good intention, but then don't do anything.
Well, right. So from a tension management perspective, I think one of the explanations for that pattern is that people decide to purchase one of those kinds of books because they have some sort of, remember the 3 S's of selling. So anyone who's going to buy or sell a product of any sort, product or service, is either trying to solve a problem, seize an opportunity, or satisfy a need. Those are the 3 categories. And if you really do look at all of your consumer behavior, you'll find every dollar you spend, you're either spending to solve a problem, seize an opportunity, or satisfy a need. And those end up being satisfying a need is in power, seizing an opportunity is in power stress, and solving a problem tends to be issues that tend to be up in stress. People might waste money, downgraded power, apathy, and apathy, but there's another process going on here. This is about self-medicating boredom by spending money. So some people, I mean, you look at things like home shopping network or whatever, you got to believe the majority of the money spent on that channel is spent on something that is neither important nor urgent. It's not solving a problem. It's not It's not helping you seize an opportunity, although sometimes they'll pitch it that way. Maybe some of the stuff you actually need, but really, I think you're spending money to self-medicate something else that's really going on.
Yeah, but when it comes to renewal, as we're talking about this path to self-discovery, to me, that's a practice, right? That's something that's done every day. That's a natural aspect of human evolution, is this resetting. So when I hear people say things like, I don't have time for it, but yet they spend time readily and unconsciously rather to have time for drama in their life. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Because this is the kind of stuff that leads to sickness, right?
Right. And so that I think I can explain this the same way that I was wanted to kind of explain what T described there is that the people come to that book or that whatever because they have some problem they're trying to solve, they have some opportunity they're trying to seize, or they have some need they're trying to satisfy. Well, then what happens is they start to even flip through the book. Forget reading it in detail. They just flip through. Maybe they read the jackets. Maybe just the fact that they're holding it in their hands and they believe that the book contains the answers to whatever it is that they're seeking to do. Remember that in and of itself lowers someone's level of productive tension. So it could simply be that the purchase of the book moved them away from that threshold, moved them away from power stress, and now they're coming down. And maybe they flip through it a little bit, and they see an idea or so, or they see enough that they're convinced it contains the rest, and they move further down. And so I do believe that that tension management has happened. Sadly, more often than not, the books are not read, and what ends up being learned from that book, if anything, is unlikely to be implemented purely because the person does not have enough tension at that moment to do it. Now, if the problem they were trying to solve comes back with a vengeance, well, they may very well read that book then. And yeah, go ahead, T.
If they can find
If they can find
it.
yeah. Where did I put it? What shelf is that on? Maybe I loaned it to somebody. So, but I think that dynamic is what's coming through over and over and over again. People had sufficient tension to take some sort of intermediate, or dare I say, incidental sort of action. And just by the fact of the matter that they did that, their tension is relieved somewhat. This is something we talk about. Yeah, go ahead, Edie.
No, that is just a really good point, T. I was just thinking there was research done a long, long time ago that when people made a doctor's appointment, that their symptoms went down like 20%, sitting in the office 40%, and a lot of them will cancel because just, you know,
they feel so much better, right?
Yes. Yeah, good point. Love it.
Yeah, well, and that's also good. Okay, so Brian's the physician we have here. So Brian, you need to tell us to what degree do you believe patients tend to comply with what their medical team has told them to do?
Percentage wise?
Well, whatever information you have, because I have a belief about it, but I don't know that my belief is true.
I would say it doesn't happen quite often. It just really doesn't. Because in fact, I just seen a research that said that less than 1% of physicians even understand how to optimize patient summaries. So in other words, it's just a load of information. And so go back to the book example. So you didn't get what you need in that book. So now you lowered your tension, but then you'll chase the answer in another book because your perception subjectively is that book didn't do it, although you didn't fully engage. And so it becomes this vicious cycle. And that's what so it almost seems like that's a SOS moment on the path to self-discovery. I call it a state of stuckness.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely correct. And so again, we can come up with many, many examples of this, but I think it's best illustrated by if we look at the strategic framework. Now, again, for those who decided to join this because it was about the Oracle of the Self, I completely get it that I'm jumping all over the place. I've made my peace with that. And so if you guys are comfortable listening to all this, just know that you're welcome to reach out to us at any time. We're more than happy to explain this. But over here on the far left side, you see the change grid with the different levels of productive tension. When we present this as an influencing skills program, as a sales skills program, we need to not only look at the change grid, but we need to look at the flow of tension that is occurring during each one of the different phases of the change process. as you learn more about this, you'll find out it's just about an influencing skill. So it has nothing to do with sales per se. It's just about trying to win someone over to a particular way of thinking. And so this strategic framework, this master stream that you're looking at, is something that plays itself out over and over again, pretty much every day of your life. Now, going back to T's illustration and this idea about why does someone go down? So I'm just going to quickly say to you that if you were in a real kind of sales situation or a situation where someone was trying to convince you of something, they should spend the majority of their time in phase 2, where they are walking that path of self-discovery. So you saw the colors over here. So all that white, green, black, red, all that kind of stuff. Well, those colors are there because, forget that, because they also appear on the background of the strategic framework. Each one of those steps has a certain level of productive tension that's more naturally associated with it. So anyway, phase 2 is all about discovery. It's all about asking people questions, leading them on the path of self-discovery so they can see what's going on, etc. But we want to do that in such a way that their level of tension goes up. And so that's what this whole white, green, black, red sort of order is all about. White, green, black, red. If we follow that, the level of tension should go up quite nicely. Now, that puts you up here at a very high point, which we call the critical management, the critical management moment's right here. We call this the transition to closing their own deal. This is the whole thing about this. Again, we want to be coaches. We've led them on this path of self-discovery. Now we want to know, how can they fix themselves? How can they help themselves? And so we would want to move them down into yellow, where they can come up with some of their own bits of solutions. So this is what we say at this point. Tension is going to go down once someone starts to explore, discover, learn more about, dabble in, notice I didn't say fully implement, whatever solution is that happens to be going on. They may have only implemented it in their mind, but the tension is still going to go down. Why? Why is that? Why is it that when someone is feeling out of control, when they're up here in stress, power stress, why is it that the moment they discover that a solution to their problem is readily available, their level of tension goes down? And you can actually watch it happen. They breathe the sigh of relief. Oh, good. Now I can take a few moments. Now I don't need to worry about it. I know that this resource is there. I know that that anytime I want, I can go and buy whatever. I can read whatever. I can do whatever. I can talk to so-and-so. Just the knowledge that those resources exist lowers your level of tension. Unfortunately, as your tension goes down, what happens to the likelihood that you're actually going to follow through and do it?
That goes down as well.
That goes down as well. And so the more someone learns about something, you would think it would mean the more likely they are to actually solve their own problem. But the truth is that knowledge is a heavy thing. As they learn more, see more, think more, just like a weight, it's pulling this level of tension down, 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 where they're no longer in power stress, where the keyword was buy or change. They might now be down in power, where they're going like, well, that's very interesting. I'm going to look it over. I'm going to take a little bit more time, gather a little bit more information. That'll lower your level of tension even more. And that's why we call this the critical management moment. If you think of the old-fashioned window shades, the pull-down window shades, it's like there's that little ring right there. And as you start to learn more about, as you start to, do all this little solution sort of stuff, etc., your level of productive tension is going to get lower and lower and lower and lower, like pulling that shade down. And so the moment someone has enough information to do whatever needs to be done, that is the critical management moment. That is the time where we need to say to them, now implement, take the action, go and do it. If I fail at this critical management moment, by the way, again, everyone, this is the oracle of the self. So this is about you doing this for you. Or maybe you're doing it with a peer. We always talk about having a ChangeWorks partner. Maybe they need to recognize, look, you hit the critical management moment a week ago. And now you're even further down. So will tension go down as someone starts to discover solutions? Absolutely. Our goal is to make sure it doesn't go down any further than we can possibly prevent, so we can get to that decision, get to that action taking far more quickly.
Mhm.
David, you've unmuted. What would you like to add to that? And Brian?
Well, certainly when they're discovering or exploring solutions, they're feeling more in control.
Yeah, yep. Because again, it's just, and keep in mind, they haven't bought anything. They haven't even cracked open the book, right? But because they believe that this resource exists, its existence alone, the knowledge of that is enough for them to go, oh, good. I thought I'd be in real trouble. Oh, you know. Now, mind you, their situation still exists, but the tension that they had about that situation has now changed. And as it has, it's also going to change the behavior, the outcome, etc. Yeah.
I think that's for me. That's why I see the path of self-discovery as not just a process like you just do, but a practice.
Right.
Like, because it seems like to me, like even what we're looking at right now, you can get to the black step and you'll have some new discoveries by the time you reach there that you may want to go back,
Yep.
cycle back to white to get grounded again in
Mhm.
terms of what is it, that mission critical aspect that's going to move you forward.
Right. And that is certainly an important thing to keep in mind about the path, is that the path is a continuous journey. So you are always in some step, because although people can multitask, the truth is when it comes to trying to solve problems, do the kinds of things the path of self-discovery is really designed to help you do, you tend to focus on them while you're doing them. And so we want to keep that focus as clean, as clear, as structured as it benefits from being. But the rest of the day, you're just moving in and out of different ways of using your mind. So sometimes you're looking at great goals and opportunities and thinking about all the possibilities. And other times you're preoccupied by something that got in your way, or you're out there working on a solution. And to Brian's point, as you begin to implement that solution, you find out how it actually is or maybe is not working, in which case the solution needs to be tweaked. Going back to him being a physician, I am sure that the initial action plan that you leave a patient with stands a strong chance of needing future revision.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because things are going to continue to change. Hopefully improvements are going to be had, but maybe you realize that what you thought was the obstacle ends up not being the obstacle or the only obstacle, as the case may be, and now you need to factor that in. Allow me to
Exactly.
give you an example of this. So as almost all of you probably know, I recently turned 65. And so I decided to go to the doctor. And by the time it was all said and done, I believe half of my body's volume of blood had been removed from me. So yeah, I'm talking like 11 tubes of blood that they actually wanted me to lay there for a while before I sat up. Okay, so full battery, every kind of test you can think of. So inflammation markers and mineral levels and you name it, plus all the normal routine stuff that we would get done anyway. And so, all right, and so one of the things that came back was that I lacked an enzyme to metabolize vitamin B12 folic acid. So it's
Oh,
yeah, and apparently it's a pretty common thing. In my particular case, I am missing the alleles, the genetic alleles from both of my parents, not just one. And so I am very likely to end up having a whole host of very well known, very well documented side effects or life impacts, because for my entire life, my body has been unable to, what do we say? Metabolize,
mm-hmm.
utilize um,
Yep.
the folic acid or vitamin 12, I guess, to whatever.
Yep.
Yep. So the
I
doctor said, now, one of the biggest things that it affects is your mood, depression, and anxiety. Meanwhile, I
Mhm.
have never hesitated to share with all of you that since I was a teenager, I have always been taking some form of antidepressant, SSRI, SNRI, anti-anxiety, whatever it happens to be. Come to find out, I have a deficiency in an enzyme. It's like, what? So
Yeah.
so this solution that I had been implementing for years, and by the way, they still said you still might be depressed, but if you don't have your folic acid at the right levels, then whatever medication you're taking is only being partially utilized. So if we can get your vitamin under control, you probably would need a much lower dosage of whatever it is that you're
Mhm.
taking, if you need it at all.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good example there, because I often find even when I'm walking the path of self-discovery and get to the obstacle perspective, the thing that I call the obstacle is usually a lot more there. It's not the thing. It's a thing that I recognize, but there's something underneath it. So your example of the body is a perfect example of that, because it's a system within systems.
Yes.
So what you just described is a vitamin deficiency. I have the same thing. It's called pernicious anemia. It
Ah,
tends to happen to vegetarians because you don't get B12 from plants. You get it from meat. And so I'm a lifelong vegetarian, so I suffer from the B12 and the folate.
Interesting. So
Hmm.
our friends Tom and Anju, who are also on the call right now, they're also lifetime vegetarians. And so now it's like I want to ask them. It's like, are you guys taking a B12 supplement? What are you guys doing?
Hmm.
But in my case, okay, I'm a carnivore. I should have B12 levels that are like off the charts. And apparently that's not the case. So
Yeah.
yeah, there you go. There you go. All right, anyway, but that's an example of that the use of a change grid or the use of this path of self-discovery is not an event kind of specific sort of thing. It's not a single experience you're going out and have. These are practices that you can implement at different levels of your life and use them when they're of value to you. In this particular case, the first and we believe most important of all of our tools is this path of self-discovery sort of thing. Get a situation in mind, ask yourself, what's currently happening? What do I really want? What do I need to get rid of? What's in the way of me being able to get there? And how am I going to do that? So the solution is all about the how. So if I said, well, I have a vitamin 12 deficiency or B12 deficiency. Well, what do I need? Well, the choices are that I can either take vitamin B12 supplementation, but it would need to be at the injectable level in my particular case, or maybe if I fix this enzyme issue, I'll be able to metabolize vitamin B12 more readily and good things will happen because of that. So I have a couple of these different sorts of solutions that have been put forward. I can put those solutions on a change grid and say this. So let me, you'll learn something about me as I do this. So I'll put in here, receive a monthly shot of vitamin B12 versus take a MTH, whatever enzyme thingy is, every single day for the rest of your life.
Mm.
Okay, I'm non-compliant by nature to the degree that we all are when it comes to tension management. Anything that becomes a routine is far more likely to become to suffer from ever diminishing tension than going and doing something less frequently. So I would say to you that while taking the vitamin is cheap and easy because it's not even a prescription, that they're really good ones that they were recommending that I would just order from Amazon. So it's not like it's a big cost, but that idea about swallowing a pill every single day, another pill every single day, why do I feel like I can be a little less compliant with that than having a monthly scheduled appointment to go in and get an injection for B12?
Mhm.
Yeah, so again, it goes back to this idea. If I go over here to the change grid, natural movement on the change grid is down grid. So even if we have a behavior that has become something that logically makes sense for us, in fact, I'll give you this example since we've got vegetarians on the thing. You've met a lot of people who decide they were going to try being a vegetarian. The moment they use the word try, you knew what the outcome was going to be down the road. So it's like Yoda said, there is no try, there is only do or not do. There is no try. And so anyway, and why is that? Well, yes, go ahead.
Is Sally on the call?
Sally is not on the call.
Well, let me share her story. When she was a teenager, she went with someone on a skidoo and it was snowing really heavy. They went over a huge hill. She held on, he didn't, and she broke her back.
Mm.
The doctor told her that she must do these exercises that he gave her every single day of her life, or she would seize up and couldn't walk.
Mhm.
And Sally's 65 now, I think.
Yep.
She does those exercises religiously every single morning for a half an hour, and nothing gets in the way. So Sally would be that type of a person that said, no, I'm going to do this every single day without any
Right.
reduction in
Right.
tension.
Yeah. Yeah. And to give people a kind of a glimpse into why, Sally will tell you that if she skips doing those exercises in the morning, she's going to be miserable by the afternoon. Being
Mhm.
miserable by the afternoon is a tension management device.
Mm.
Think about that. Her body has basically said, you didn't do what we needed you to do to stay limber and loose and all the good things that all those stretches would end up doing. And so guess what? Now you get to be stiff and uncomfortable and in some pain or whatever. So at least in Sally's situation, she has had that element of constant reminder to keep doing this, or the price must be paid for failing to do it. So I think, yeah, Linda, if you want to unmute, I think that's Sally has always said it's fast if she doesn't do it.
Oh, yeah, Sally will never not do it.
Yeah.
Because, and that's a perfect tension example. Because she goes into pain, and it's horrible if she doesn't do her exercises.
That's right. And luckily for us, Linda's other sister, Becky, has a similar outcome from a different cause. She has lupus and that. And so if she doesn't stay in motion, she starts to get stiffened up or whatever. So Becky insists on cleaning all day, every day, or gardening all day, every day. When she comes to visit, you have no idea how clean this house, how organized this house, everything, because she's got to stay busy. So we thought, well, we can leverage that. So
I never thought of that example that you just described as a tension management, but I guess it is. And I had a similar situation. I was a preemie baby, so that's in part why I am a vegetarian. I just grew up never being able to digest meat because I lack what's called intrinsic factor, or the proteins that line your stomach that helps the acid to break down big particles. And,
right. So for you, it's just going to rot in your tummy.
yeah, so it just never feels comfortable, and so I just don't eat meat. But it's the same thing. Like I was always breaking bones and had my hips pinned up because I will fall and just like Humpty Dumpty, like crack. And so the doctor told me the same thing. Now this is as a teenager. He told me that you're going to have arthritis and all these different kinds of things when you get older. And so I never miss a day of working out. I don't work out hard, but I mean the flexibility,
stay in motion,
the mobility, those kinds of things are part of my daily process. And I know the difference when I don't do it.
That's right. That's right. Well, and keep in mind that no one is a more powerful tension manager than nature herself.
Mm.
So there's all kinds of feedback we're getting constantly that should be correcting our behavior. So, as you get older, your knees start to hurt, this starts to hurt, whatever it is. But when we touch a hot stove, there's pain being given to us as a message because we got to do something about it immediately. And so talk about tension management. I think that really it's just what was happening naturally ended up spilling into our behaviors early on with family members, other people who would be living. I'm going all the way back to almost prehistoric sorts of times, very primal kinds of times. When people started living together, well, they started to recognize other ways of managing people's levels of tension to get them to do whatever needed to be done. So moms instinctively know how to manage a child's level of tension to get things done, you know? So there's lots of things that there, but no one is a more powerful tension manager than nature is. So yeah, okay. All right, what am I talking about? Where am I at? All right, so anyway, when you are walking this path and you come up with solution items, you can certainly put those over there. Now, going back to my example, I would tell you that the activity of going and getting a monthly B12 shot is a lot more likely to be done on an ongoing basis than me taking a pill every single day forever and ever and ever. And so, you know, we have to just kind of choose accordingly, know that these patterns in yourself are true and why you won't do it. So a lot of times routines, etc., end up lowering your level of tension where you kind of abandon it. But for some reason, when people have things where they make life choices because of beliefs they have or whatever, like when it comes to one of the motivations for being a vegetarian, that could certainly be something that's all about matching your value system more than it really is about health concerns. So you might think of the value stuff as being primarily motivating and the health stuff as a bonus for people that are so motivated. Yeah, T,
So would that be that Paul? I'm sorry. Would that be in the category of mission critical when you start talking about like the value aspect?
Well, that's part of it. So for example, if I didn't have the option of a B12 shot or taking this pill every day, maybe just maybe there's going to be a different tension management approach that has to be used. But keep in mind that my underlying problem is invisible to me on a day-to-day basis, right? When you look at all these side effects, obviously no one noticed them for 60 years of my life. And so, you know, it's not that kind of thing where Sally is immediately in discomfort. Or your arthritis might flare up within an hour or so. You're getting this feedback from your body. A great many things that are underlying chronic kinds of illnesses become things that the person grows accustomed to, even though they might be unpleasant. And as they grow accustomed to them, their level of tension goes down, 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 down. When you're down here in power apathy, you've got two major outcomes that are possible. One is that the person is going to let it fall by the wayside, toss it altogether. The other thing is that it becomes a habit. Well, if it becomes habituated, well, now it's happening more on autopilot. And so, you know, if I was taking a whole handful of pills every day, my thought would be, well, what's another one? But that's not the case. And so for me, something needs to keep me more accountable for doing that particular task because I'm more likely to move down grid and abandon it. And, you know, God forbid that I start feeling better, because the moment I start feeling better, I'm probably going to think, well, I don't need to keep taking this because I'm fixed. You know? It's like, no, we've just brought you up to speed. So, all right, T, what did you want to add to that?
So, you know, after you all talked, routines become mission incidental, but it depends upon the value and the criticality of having to do something.
Yeah.
For instance, your B12, you must take it. Sally must do that. I was thinking, you know, I've been going to the physical therapist because I fell and yada yada, but I'm feeling better and I kind of tapered off. But you know what? It's starting to go back, and so I have to put that back up into mission critical.
Right. Absolutely. Good observation. Yeah.
And so I have to keep that in front of me, just like my goals, and those have to be mission critical. And if they ever become routine, well, that's good. I've kind of fallen into that. But if it ever falls out of routine and not doing it, then becomes mission critical again. So
exactly. Very
good.
Very good. Yeah, Chris, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, this brings to mind the illusion of choice because of the efficacy of your B12 shot. The shot versus the pill, it's very different dosage and how much of it gets into your body. So is it an illusion of choice, believing that you have a choice of a pill when you really need the shot because of the efficacy of it?
That's a good question, Doc. What do you think?
I yield to Brian, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I tend to think of like you're telling a patient and you can see them physically in pain, so you know there's some issue there. They get the diagnosis, and then you have to walk through this idea of a plan that you think would be effective, and they're not compliant. So then they come back and you're like, okay, what's going on here? This
Right.
idea that they left with this patient summary of information, how to go about it, did not translate for them. And I'm thinking in life terms of I always say payment in advance, payment due. Payment in advance means you at least try something, get some evidence, at least from my perspective, get some evidence. Let's figure out what works and what doesn't. But payment due, when you don't do those things and one system can impact another system,
Yeah,
you're not going
that's
to
a big
enjoy that.
Right. No, no, no,
So
no.
I think there is that illusion of control in terms of efficacy, because especially if you're giving them just all this information, they leave like, this is just way too much for me to do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's true. And again, life comes along, and we all know that if you're looking at your change grid, and again, for those of you who are here for Oracle of the Self, we want you to get really good at using a change grid, because we can tell you without doubt that if you put everything you need to take care of today on the change grid, the stuff that plots further up grid and out grid is much more likely to be done by the end of the day than the stuff that's down grid. And in grid, we don't even explore all that much. So there's enough either tension to get you to get it done, or there's enough drive to compel you to get it done. But if you're down grid, you have neither the tension nor the drive necessary to do those. That's why it's like, well, if it's become a routine kind of a habit sort of thing, well, fine, it'll get done then, but it's not so much because you're what do I say, in the moment, deliberately, consciously choosing to do it. No, it's just become part of the fabric of how you tend to live your life. And that's great. That's really wonderful to be able to establish habits that serve you well.
You know, that it's interesting. It's about keeping, like, my office is terrible right now, and I just cleaned it up. And it reminds me of people who are hoarders. It's like they haven't gotten into the routine of really understanding why it's important. I don't know. I'm
No, you're absolutely right. And in fact, I can share with you the situation about a clean desk. And tell me if what I say matches it. Maybe it's something that people named T all have in common. But I'm fine if I clean my desk. I don't mind cleaning my desk. It's it's great. And my desk is absolutely clean. You can extend it to the whole house. The house is spotless. Everything is where it belongs. And then there is the first, I'll call it failure. The first time you allow something to sit where it does not belong, and then it becomes a magnet, and more things start to just pile up. And after a while, you kind of go like, "Oh my God, how did this happen again?"
It's when you turn the lights off and it multiplies.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Talks to us. It's the neighbors. Okay, we got 2 minutes left. I want to make sure that I leave you guys with a bit of a practical exercise. Now, you do have these forms, and I've chatted them over to all you guys so often. If you don't have them by now, then I don't know what to say or do. But I'm happy to email them to you if you don't have. If I had the files handy, I'd just slide them over in place right now. But I don't. So I would like you to actually fill out a path of self-discovery. I'd like you to actually print out this form, and whether you're doing it on your own or with a colleague, think about some situation that's going on in your life that you'd like to get the wisdom of the oracle from. And then start walking the path. Describe that current situation, that desired situation. Describe those obstacles. Start putting together some kind of actions you could take to overcome those obstacles, address those obstacles, so that you can get to your desired state. Again, we don't usually come up with solutions that are directly attached to the goal, because we know that if there weren't any obstacles, you'd be there already. You'd be there. So we need to focus here in the obstacle world. And you can throw in some feelings if you want, but I want you to actually take the opportunity to use this tool to think about a specific situation in your real life. Now, along the way, you can certainly start to throw in some activities, and I would encourage you to do that. But I want to give you some best practices about how to phrase activities so you can get the most meaningful insight out of the plotting of it onto the change grid. So that really is your homework. Walk the path on something and see if you can start building an activity list. And then from there, we can kind of get on to the next little step, and that is, how do you go about creating your change grids? So,
You know what, T, going back to what you were saying about getting the shot instead of taking the pill, I'm thinking, is he nuts? I mean, it takes 1 second to, you know what I mean? And I am thinking, do you, I don't take that personally, right?
no.
But listen, T, do you think you have a belief that going to the doctor, that you have more trust in that is more of the healing process because of your belief system of being present?
Yeah, well, I do believe that going to my doctor, monthly or whatever, is becoming part of a healthy habit that will serve me well, because the doctor that I go to, you guys know, I go to a concierge kind of doctor. I pay a flat fee and I get unlimited services. So it costs me nothing to go in and get the injection. I don't know if I have to pay for the B12, but I imagine B12 is cheap. So, who knows? But I think it's that idea about going, that every month I'm spending some conscious, deliberate time with my doctor, and my doctor will give me an hour. It's not like going in and getting 10 seconds and you're done. No, you go in and you have an hour-long appointment with the doctor, and it's just the wellness check-in. And so I figure I should do that. I mean, I'm paid for it, so I might as well do that. And he does
It's
everything.
value consciousness. But T, I'm going to fly out to Arizona. I have never heard of a physical that thorough. That's incredible.
Neither have I.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those concierge doctors are said to be the new way that primary care can move to more value-based care.
Right.
So they don't necessarily have to deal with insurance when they're concierge.
They don't.
And so that's the whole point.
There is no insurance. There is no insurance.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, I've got Medicare like everybody else my age and older. I would rather pay that physician for that undivided attention, because everyone tells me that the worst part about trying to use your Medicare is that if you get to see a doctor, period, you are a number on a treadmill. You're just being pushed through the system. Well, I can't imagine that bodes well for quality of care.
Yeah.
You go ahead. Oh, I don't know who's speaking. All right, anyway, there you go. So, all right, so we're done for now. So thanks everybody, and we will pick up where we left off. But do this walk through the path, and do start to think in terms of mission critical activities. What are the mission critical activities? So with that, thanks everybody. Take care.
Bye everyone.
everybody.
Thanks, T.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, T.